10th episode of the Cut to Scene podcast. I'm Aditya with Devansh here, and today we are going to talk about Three Billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. Yes, that's not a fact, that's just the name of a film, and you might be led to believe otherwise, but that's not true. Okay, yes. So, Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri is a film written and directed by Martin McDonagh and starring Frances McDormand, Woody Harrelson, Sam Rockwell, Abbie Cornish, and others. And the film is primarily set in the fictional town of Ebbing in the state of Missouri in the United States. Mildred Hayes, played by Frances McDormand, plays a mother who has recently lost her daughter, who was raped while driving. Trigger warning. The police of the town of Ebbing, Missouri, have not yet been able to find out who the criminal was. And to contest the police, what Mildred Hayes does is she rents out three billboards outside the town and writes a few incendiary messages against the police officers. And this she refers to the chief of the police in the town, who is William Willoughby, played by Woody Harrelson. And this sets off a chain of events in motion where even the another racist cop played by Sam Rockwell also gets involved. And there's a lot of things happening in this film, so I don't think it's fair to give a short summary of this film, so I'll stop here. Do you want to talk about Martin McDonagh first, Devansh?
Sure. So for me, this was a new thing venturing into the work of Martin McDonagh. I had not heard of him. I had heard of the movie. You had recommended it to me, I think, a couple of years back. And then I watched two of his movies. I read the script of Ebbing first, then watched the movie, and then I watched In Bruges, which is another 2008 movie of his, I think. And very frankly, I was blown away by In Bruges, not so much by Ebbing. Again, I was blown away by the script of Ebbing more than the movie itself. So yeah, I mean, a very crisp writer, I felt, because if you look at this movie, it's a 115-minute movie written in an 85-page script. That is in itself a remarkable achievement. Just to clarify to the audience, scripts are written in such a way that generally, mota we'll say one page of a script is equal to 1 minute of screen time. So in that sense, he has basically taken this much, and this movie clearly has a lot of content into it, right? And he has put that into such a tight and compact script that says a lot. And the fact that he was a playwright, or he is a playwright, sorry, he is a playwright, really shows in the dialogues, the amount of juice that the dialogues have, and everything that he conveys. And I really appreciate the sense of dark comedy that he has, whether it is in Bruges, where he's treating topics like suicide, or whether it is in Ebbing, where he's treating topics like misogyny, rape, and racism for that matter. So yeah, that was my opinion. That was my initial reading of the guy. Yeah.
Right. So, as you said, like one page is equal to 1 minute of script. Of course, there are deviations from this. For example, Aaron Sorkin wrote a script of 200 pages for The Social Network, which was a film under 2 hours. But anyway, coming back to Martin McDonagh, I first got introduced to him through In Bruges because it was the so-called cult film back in college, and then I actually read his play. It's called The Pillow Man, which is arguably his most famous play. It's a very long play, and it's a very episodic play in the sense that it's the premise is that there is a writer being investigated for the deaths of some children in the town, and then we go into each of his short stories about the deaths of children in the town. And it's a very episodic play. I personally like that play a lot, and that is when I discovered him really and started reading his other work. And when Ebbing, Missouri released in 2017, I think, yeah, it won the Oscars and stuff. I basically like Ebbing more than I like In Bruges. Basically because I think it's a departure from his earlier work. I mean, I don't seem to find a word for it, but if I put this in short, it's a more ambitious film as compared to In Bruges. There are more characters and more things happening and things like that. And that's why I think
He's trying to say more things than is usual.
sure. I mean, I see. That's the thing. That's my opinion about McDonough is sure he's trying to say a lot of things, but that's secondary. His main interest is to drive the plot forward all the time, and not. And I personally don't feel he's a person who wants to say a lot apart from just tell stories which have these elements of comedy and tragedy at the same time in them. But yeah, I mean, we can discuss more towards the end of this episode. But let's just start off. Let's just talk about the town of Ebbing, Missouri. Now, Ebbing is a fictional town, though it's set in a non-fictional state. So, what were the first impressions that you got about the town, Devansh?
Right. So when we look at it, we open to this scene of three billboards, which are standing amidst a large blanket of fog, right? And there's this very suspenseful music, sort of an opera-esque feel to it, is playing in the background, right? And that sort of tells you that okay, listen, this is a really serious story, and something grave is gonna happen here, something grim is gonna happen here, something very serious. And then that setting always throws me back to Hound of the Baskerville and that sort of English countryside feels where there's this huge expanse which is very mysterious. So that, and then we slowly move on, and I distinctly remember there's this one scene where Mildred is driving her son to his school and then goes to his shop. So the car scene, there's this car scene near the 13th minute of the film where we follow through with Mildred's car, and we follow her through the town as she goes and drops her son to his school, and then goes to to the store, and that establishes the geography of the town pretty well. So now what that does is that tells me, okay, here's the setting for you. Here's where everything is gonna happen, most probably, right? So it gives me the entire countryside feel, that this is a small town story, and that itself is conveyed also by the title. So yeah, that was my initial reading. Also, the fact that the way they opened and they showed the entire billboard wala stretch of road, it was very effective in communicating that this is an isolated place. This is a place that is very very remote, that is less traveled by, and so it heightened the aura around that place as the scene of the crime.
I see. Right. Yeah. The first things that struck me about the town was primarily because of the usage of music in which the character of Francis McDormand explores the town. So the music is by Carter Burwell. Carter Burwell is basically I mean, if you've watched a Coen Brothers film, you have listened to his soundtrack. He's the composer for most Coen Brothers films, which have excellent background music as always. It gave me, I was thrown back to the usage of music or the lack of it also in No Country for Old Men, where it's a similar kind of setup. I thought because it was given a music, the background music was what you could expect in, let's say, a Western movie, like the Western genre in American cinema, right? So I got that feeling first, and I don't know if that was completely justified. I couldn't really justify it in my head, even at that point when I was watching, and even at the end of the film. But anyway, I got a sense of this that it's a gloomy town, also because of that. In addition to what you mentioned, and of course, I think it was a brilliant move where a brilliant piece of writing and also direction that you establish the whole geography of the town in just one move. And it's also sort of convenient that the office for the advertising office and the police station are just opposite each other. So basically it's a very compact town. You get a sense of compactness from even that choice. And then you'll also see that the billboards and Mildred's house are also very close to each other. So you have a sense of compactness to this, and hence it is justified that Mildred will pass the billboards each time she goes to her house, which is also used again and again in the film as we go on. And one other thing I found really so. What do you first of all, what do you think about this? The choice of the advertising office being just opposite the police station? Did it throw you off?
Well, it did not throw me off as much as I just accepted it as it was served to me. I thought it was a very intelligent choice because that is like the entire conflict of that movie would be then set on that road, right? On that stretch of road. And that is something that I can accept given the small town setting. So I can accept कि हाँ ये होता होएगा. This is okay-ish for me. And if you notice the first time you notice that okay this is how close these two places are when Mildred Hayes goes to his office and then pulls down the blinds to observe the police office. Now, so that tells me that okay, this is the target of the entire thing. The police is what she's trying to target, and here is where the main operation or the main instigation is gonna come from. So in that sense, it was very effective to me. What do you think?
It really threw me off in the first instance that I saw it. Basically, when Mildred just stares at the billboards and just goes into the advertising office. But then I got like by at least the halfway mark of the film, I sensed I mean not completely, but a few instances of magical realism in the film. For example, the character of Bill Willoughby writes in the letter to Mildred as we go on in the film that that how these cases get solved is like somebody just hears somebody talking in the bar, and which is referred to later in the film. And if this is a nice call out to magical realism, and hence because of that I had not I thought the fact that it could be close to each other was sort of justified. Of course, it's not just kept there just to show the compactness of the town. It also serves a very important plot point in the film later. Yeah, so I didn't think it was off-putting, except for the time I saw it for the first time.
Some things that struck me in the second watch, and maybe we can start talking a bit about the imagery of the film and how we have. So we spoke about how it was a gloomy film since the beginning, right? And it is somewhere in the middle that I personally was thrown off. That okay, it started off as a gloomy film, but the way the characters are speaking and the things that they're doing do not look as as gloomy as much as they look more like a dramedy, in the sense that there are certain things that are normalized, there are certain things that are being treated with a comic effect, and there's a lot of comedy in the script as well. So that was pretty nice. And then so the second in the during the second watch, when I was looking at the billboards in the opening scene, they reminded me of the police department, because one major focus of the film is the billboards, and that is the focus of the instigator, in the sense that that is the target. The police force is the target. Now the billboards are dilapidated and then painted in red and then burnt, which is exactly what happens with the police. Every time, so when Will kills himself, the scene just preceding that, I think, or succeeding that, I'm not sure which, sees Mildred going out to the billboards and setting flowers around it. So that sort of gave me the funeral feel. That happens again when Sam Rockwell is in his house, and there is this point of huge tension because you see Sam Rockwell with a gun in his hand, and you're not sure what is gonna happen because the film has been very unpredictable so far, and you're half sure that he'll probably just shoot his head off, right? And again you cut back to Mildred when Sam calls her up, and again she's been setting flower pots at the billboards, and so that is again signifying an impending death. So I thought that was pretty nice. That was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't particularly read much into that, but now that you say it, I don't think it's that bad a reading either. Yeah. So let's go on with our conversation, and let's talk about how the film, one thing that I thought was that the film could really have been set anywhere else, meaning any other place. So I didn't think, for example, that Ebbing, Missouri was really crucial to the narrative. I mean, maybe Ebbing, Missouri as a small town was crucial to the narrative. Ebbing, Missouri as a place in America was not really crucial. You could have set this easily in, let's say, some place in England where in a similar town in England where there are these racist like slash Brexit tendencies. You could have set it even in India, in a certain town, and it would have still worked. But yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think I agree with your point. And like I was while doing my research, I stumbled upon this incident that happened back in 2014. That was a racial killing, and probably that is why Missouri, as a state, where the racial slurs and actions against blacks or people of color would be normalized, as it is shown in this movie, would be sort of acceptable as a part of the setting, might have been one of the reasons of the decision, in the sense that if today you're making a movie on misogyny and you set it in Haryana, then I don't need you to explicitly state that, okay, or explicitly point out. That would be a part of the setting and that would be given.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, and also Missouri has, I think, like, traditionally been a red state in the sense it's been always a Republican state, especially for the election of Donald Trump. And of course, Missouri is in the South, meaning the Confederate States when referring to the Civil War. So, of course, that makes it a thing. That probably, is fine. But my point was also something which is related to that. That if for example, as you mentioned the Haryana example, if this movie was probably set in a very racist or classist place, like some remote village in Uttar Pradesh, it would still work. Is my thing. And then what do you think about the elements of what do you think about the magical realism point that I raised actually? And maybe we can talk a bit about the absurdism and the magical realism and elements of comedy and tragedy.
Right. Just before I get into that, just so that I don't miss it, one very strong theme that I noticed throughout the movie and in the frame design as well as the cinematography was the presence of greens and reds. So the movie uses these two shades in the palette very very heavily and very distinctively, so that you can clearly make it out. So for example, Mildred Hayes' jumpsuit is green. The t-shirt that she wears inside it is red. The police station is the only place where a constant shade of gray is used. So in the sense that this is where the lines blur, green is generally used for the outside world's feelings, where that is where the misogyny lies. So that is where when you see a lot of characters in their houses, or say when you see actually Sam Rockwell hanging out and chilling in his place, there's this scene where he picks up the phone. The phone is bright red. Sam Rockwell is wearing something green. The entire surroundings are green. The billboards are bright red against a green backdrop. Again, for me, my reading into it was that the red parts are where the fury lies, where the victimhood lies, and the green parts are where the infliction of that pain rises, because every you see this character in the green jumpsuit all the time, and she is going around, sort of seeking her revenge, in that sense. And the police station is the only place where things are gray. Now coming back to your question, I think it was weird for me. Even when I was reading the script, there was that part where the fawn appears, and that is practically like one of the only parts where we see a vulnerable Mildred Hayes. Right. Another part would probably be when she starts crying in front of her ex-husband, when he's trying to get onto her nerves. But so now that fawn appearing was a very sort of a it was something that I would expect in a Murakami novel, and there is no explanation to that. And there is just this conversation that she has with herself, where she's asking if it's maybe a reincarnation sign or something of that sort, or whatever it is. It just reminds her of her daughter and goes away from that scenery.
But yeah, while we're on this fawn, what do you think about that usage of an animal? What do you think it signifies?
I think, see, fawns generally, like deer in itself, is generally seen as a very innocent, sort of, like you'd never see, even in the animal kingdom, if you look at it, deer is generally a victim, right? So fawns and deer are associated with a, like, every time you see them, you're bound to sort of sympathize with them. And in that sense, I think that that fawn could have been like the metaphor for the daughter, in the sense that she was also roaming around here, and that is where she was harmed, while she was just a thing of beauty that had landed up at this place. What are your thoughts on that?
I was actually, that's one of the only points in the film where I was genuinely thrown off, and I still can't rationalize that a lot. And I didn't quite get the point of it. So in the especially in the context of the rest of the film, right? The rest of the film is devoid, and it's written like a proper theater person would write it. It's devoid of any unnecessary objects, characters, um, themes, etc. It's whereas I could really get that, I could make the connections as to this person is there because of XYZ reason, but I didn't quite get the point of the fawn being there. And I guess the if the explanation really is an call back to her daughter, I don't really get why that was necessary at that point. I mean, sure, it's his choice to put it, but I didn't get why it was necessary.
I just see that scene as one scene where our empathy for that character, sort of shifts into like a sympathetic tone, and we see her break down for once.
Right, right. So what I was also mentioning about, the other aspects of comedy and comic tragedy, magical realism, absurdism is basically all these things that are sort of predetermined and and come like, I mean, the as the example I took earlier, Bill Willoughby writes in the letter that this crime will probably be solved. Of course, it's not solved in that way, but then it gives direction to the film. The other is things like when Sam Rockwell's character is in the police station when he's gone to take his whatever, and he starts reading the letter, and in the end he says your life is gonna change, and then that's when the last Molotov cocktail comes and hits the police, and it, sure, just changes life in some way. So that I think was it was a very interesting choice to me, because it did, of course, it did the whole. I mean, it gave a sense of this comic tragedy to the film. But apart from that, I think it was also an interesting writing choice, because it allowed the writer, and also in this case the director, to give things a different way of looking at them. For example, and we will come back to we'll go to the scene, the first scene that happens between Bill Willoughby and Mildred Hayes. But and this is a constant thing throughout the film, that there's a conflict, and by classical laws of conflict and resolution, you would expect that in that one scene the conflict will be resolved. But what instead ends up happening is the conflict is not at all resolved. The conflict is just escalated further. And in fact, I would go as so far to say that there is no resolution of a conflict in this film, like no real resolution. Of course, there's a resolution there's a dramatic end to the film, but
There is
yeah,
acceptance. There is no closure.
there is no closure. Exactly, closure is the word I was looking for, and there is no real closure in the film. And hence, I think the elements of comedy and magical realism are crucial to making that happen. The escalation of the conflict in certain scenes, because if it was a very realistic film, that escalation of the conflict in that particular situation would not have been seemed justified.
Correct. I mean, I agree with that in the sense that if you end a high conflict situation with say comedy, um, you're okay. I mean, the audience sort of accepts that okay, this might be a good segue to move on to the next scene or to the next instance or to the next conflict. But if you do not do that, well, then that keeps irking me. As in, what comes after this? How did they settle on that? Because even in real life, even when you're ending any conversation, most likely you are to just you would have ended that conversation on a particular tone or on a particular note or on a particular thought. So yeah, that was my reading. Now let's do this scene breakdown while we move on. And so we are looking at the scene where Willoughby and Mildred meet for the first time, and I loved the choreography and the and how the scene was shot. And it is a very good example of how you can shoot arguments and conflicts. So we your thoughts on this scene?
I think this is really the first scene that gives you a sense of that sets the tone for the rest of the film. This is the first real scene that actually sets the tone for the rest of the film because you till now all your sympathies are with the character of Mildred. You have no sympathies for the character of Willoughby. You have no sympathies for anybody else. What happens is this scene is really crucial to the film because it changes our sympathies, and we realize that at least these two characters are very grey. We'll realize later in the film that they are not the only two characters who are grey. Everybody in the film is grey, and that is why I like the scene a lot. Of course, the dialogue is great because it just hits you like the lines are written in such such a language that hits you right when you say it. Like for example, when Willoughby tells Mildred that there's one another thing, I've got cancer, and she says, I know. And then he says, like, you still put up the billboards even knowing that. And then she replies to him, yeah, I mean, they won't be of any use after you as effective after you croak, right? And that's just like a see. This is also what I mean by like you would expect this scene to go when Willoughby tells her that the that he's got cancer. You would expect the scene to go in a certain way, like she takes sympathy to him. She would say, okay, they'll come to some sort of truce. But that is not what happens. McDonagh takes the not taken route here by saying that no, fuck you. I mean, that's exactly why I'm putting it up right now. And this actually takes me back to one of the advices that my theater guru gave me, that if you're writing a scene or if you're doing, I mean, this holds to anything, but like if you're writing a scene, if you're composing a scene on stage, or if you're even acting in it, try to do the most not taken path in that scene. And that is the element of surprise is really key for somebody who's watching. You can always make another thousand kuch kuch hota hai, but then you can also go a different way and try to make a different romantic movie, like let's say something like Ek Mein aur Ek Tu, which really throws you off in the climax. So yeah, that was my biggest takeaway from the scene.
Mhm. So for me, I mean, as much as I appreciated the setting up and the way the characters interacted amongst themselves, it was more of a callback to this conversation that we had with Sati sir about Chintu ka birthday mein, the scene where Vinay Pathak is on one side and the three women are on the other side, and then they argue, and by the end the positions sort of change. Now, if we look at this film, we can clearly see that Mildred is facing the billboards, which are on the backdrop of Willoughby, which are in effect affecting his life constantly, right? And then Willoughby is trying to explain the situation to her. Now, we are also on a slope for some reason that places Mildred in a higher position than Willoughby, right? So because we are all with her, we understand her, and that is why she can sit in that demanding arrogance of hers and look up to Willoughby and demand justice. And Willoughby is the one who has to stand lower down, who has to put more effort and face up to her and then answer her. So we get that. Now, this is not a place of sorrow for Mildred Hayes. This is not a place of sorrow. This is a place of anger where she's coming from, and that is why she's looking up to Willoughby in that sense. And then and we know she's suggesting stuff that is impractical, but at that point we do not understand that. We want to agree with her. We want to agree that yes, you should take every male baby that is born and whatever the solution that she suggests, because we understand where she's coming from. Now, and this is also a recurring pattern in the movie, that every time there is a character which is depending on another character for a favor or for an obligation, or say is demanding something of the other character, the person who's asking for the favor is placed on the left of the frame, and the person who's obliging is on the right of the frame. So if you observe that in this sequence also, it sticks. It holds. Now, So the police is on the right and Mildred is on the left on the swings. Now, then slowly we see this guy move towards Mildred and sit on the swing. Now both of them are in the same plane of understanding, right? And then he's trying to convince her that he does not think that the billboards are very fair. Now, the asker, like as in the person who's supposed to answer or oblige, is shifted from being Willoughby to Mildred, and so Mildred has entered the right side of the frame, and Willoughby is on the left side. So this switching has happened, and we have understood that the tables have turned. Now we see that the action is being demanded of Mildred. And then he requests her and then he tells her that he has cancer and then she gives her effective justification. If you notice, he gets up and goes. And at that point, at that very moment, we see the softening of her expressions. Because she can't afford to soften up in front of these people whom she's taking action against, because then they'll understand that okay, this woman can be played around with, her emotions can be manipulated, and so let's tap onto that. She has to make this strong image no matter however she's feeling, right? That strong image breaks though. Sorry, that strong image breaks though when they are later in an interrogation scene and he cuffs up blood into her, like on her face.
No, I mean, of course, this is a really nice observation, and I think there's another thing which this scene did for me, which I didn't mention earlier, was that it also sets up Mildred's character very. We know the place that she's coming from. We know that she wants revenge. She is out for blood, right? Because we understand, and this is what is very effective scene building and dialogue writing, because it's now you understand, right? The scene is what, a minute long, but imagine the number of things you're taking from the scene because you're also seeing visuals. One is, of course, what you said. You see the power dynamics change throughout the scene. You know, you start having sympathies for Willoughby. You also know that Mildred's character is not that good a person. She really wants to kill everybody. Or sorry, she wants to draw blood and match their DNAs with everybody, and we see that Willoughby is actually the more rational person over here. But then we don't judge her for being like that because we know where she's coming from. So it establishes a lot of things, and I think it's a very effective lesson in that, in character establishment and scene building.
Correct. I mean, then the other scene that we were talking about, where she's in the office, that scene is also very, very effective in establishing a few things. It establishes that this person is humane, she's not a monster. So if Willoughby is spitting blood onto her face accidentally, she'll sympathize with him and she'll go and call the doctors and all of that, right? At the same time, there is this entire and a very, very important issue. Like, I think this scene is very, very important socially, as a social commentary also, because they're talking about the he said, she said instance that is often brought up nowadays. In that scene, and again, just before the he says, she says conversation, she's having this conversation with Sam Rockwell where she's talking about his actions against races and his racial discrimination essentially, and she works him up because of that. So I think that was again a very important scene in the movie.
Yeah, yeah, I love that scene, but actually for a very weird reason. I mean, of course, this thing of again, the scene is not resolved in the way that you would think a scene like that would be resolved. It's like you just see like him coughing blood on her face, a very off-putting scene, right? Because it's not resolved in the way you think it would be, like just him strong arming her into saying something. And again, like that adds to the tone of the film. But I like the other choice that is made about Sam Rockwell's character in the Dixon's character, because we have not seen him a lot before the scene, right? We have seen him once, maybe when he sees the billboards and calls Willoughby for the first time, and we right now we just think he's just another character in the film. But this his fact about him being racist and things like that is actually established in very, very small scenes. Of course, it's established right in the first scene where we get a hint of that he has racist leanings, but then it's then established in the bar scene where we understand that he stays with his mother. Then we understand that he's actually a racist cop in the conversation that Willoughby has with the desk sergeant in his office, and also in this particular scene where Mildred is trying to work him up. And that all makes sense. That I mean, without us really understanding, the character of Dixon is being built up so that it can come of use once Willoughby dies to the plot. In a plot context is what I mean. So that is again why I really like this scene.
Nice. And maybe just one thing I'd like to quote from this New Yorker article that I was reading about the film, and the comment on the cinematography and the visual style of the movie was that we are celebrating how prettily we know how to present our decline, because the movie in itself is talking about the decline, right? I mean, there has been a case which is being, which we are not being able to get justice to. There are so many wrongdoings that there are people who are turning insanely violent, and so there's a lot of things that demand closure but are not getting any. Um, but at the same time, we are celebrating how prettily we are arriving at that point.
I really like that sentence, and I think that is also a part of what the movie is trying to say, and which we can go into in a little while. But before that, I want to spend some time in talking about the performances of the film, two of which actually earned the Academy Award for the Best Supporting Actor and the Best Actress. All three main characters were actually nominated for their Oscars, right? And I think for me, I have not watched a lot of work that Frances McDormand has done. I've only watched her mostly in the Coen Brothers films and in this. And of course, she's a fixture in Coen Brothers film. Also, she's Joel Coen's wife. So and there she's been like phenomenal, right? Like if you take Fargo, and you I think that's one of the best performances by an actor ever, right? And but I personally prefer her performance in this film over that, because I think there's an added sense of empathy that she brings to the performance, with the small things that she does, right? And we don't, I mean, though Martin McDonagh is such a powerful writer and the material itself is so powerful, um, Frances McDormand just rises over that, because you see the first ever instance that we get to see her, right? There is so much that she's saying with her lips and her eyes and her expressions on her face. You know that she's thinking of doing something with these billboards. Even if you have not watched the trailer of the film, which I hadn't when I was watching the film, I just knew the title of the film and I was watching it and I was like, yeah, so she's thinking of something to do with this. She wants to use these billboards in some space, and this is conveyed without a single line of dialogue. This is just just her looking at the billboards and thinking, and I think
And
that's
biting her nails.
biting her nails,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's so I really, I mean, of course, kudos to the director Martin McDonagh, because getting such a performance out of an actor, I would imagine, is not that simple, and that's why I also feel that the film has not over directed, and which I'll come to later. But while I'm on Frances McDormand, there is this scene, right, where the billboards are now burnt, and then she wakes up in bed the next morning, and she starts crying, and then she sees that, she looks at her slippers, she sees that that is at a total, it's like a tonal difference between her and her state that at that point and her slippers, and then that becomes, a sort of internal monologues that she has with herself, told through the story with those two legs. And I thought that was a phenomenal, of course, writing choice, as well as the way she acted it out, right? The change of emotion from real sadness to trying to take that in a comic spirit was, I think, a very effective tool to set her character, to make us sympathize with the character more. So I really love Frances McDormand's performance in the film. Of course, it goes without saying that Sam Rockwell's performance is also mind blowing. The um, I mean, the kind of nuance he brings to the character of Dixon is something else. And of course, Woody Harrelson. I mean, I think I would have loved it if the whole movie was just his letters being read out. I mean, I used to I literally had tears in my eyes when I watched it for the first time and the letters were being read out because it comes at such important junctures in the film because like for example when Marge why am I saying Marge Mildred I'm taking her name from Fargo but when Mildred starts reading the letter we've all just seen that she has been confronted by Abbie Cornish who plays the wife of Dixon and there's like a very intense scene before that right there's of course the scene with the wife and also with this intruder who just comes into the shop and it's a very crucial juncture in this film and of course the next time a letter gets read out which is with Dixon again it's a very crucial juncture in the film where we see that Dixon is now going to sort of pay for his crimes if you will and so I think the performances just raise the notch raise this the standard of this film a notch higher and yeah I mean of course Martin McDonagh in the films that he has done has worked with really good actors but I think this stood out for me this movie stood out for me even with his earlier movies because of the acting as well what are your thoughts
Right. I mean, yeah, I'll talk about the actors as well as the characters that they're playing. And what I felt was one of the scenes where her acting really stood out to me was when, she's at the dentist, and then we realize that there's a danger just by looking at her eyes and her expressions. Um, because she is suspicious of the dentist and then I would also like to comment on how McDonough is so fearless about showing gore or showing blood, right? In Bruges, mein, he had a person jump off a watchtower and smash himself on the ground and still live for a conversation with an actor. Here we have her piercing his nail, the dentist's nail on screen. Then we have Red being beaten by Rockwell's character,
thrown off for
and
building right
yeah, thrown off from the window, and we see him rolling down the parapet into the road.
Actually,
And then
if I
we
can just
have
interrupt you at that scene for me is also another way in which McDonough is not over directing his stuff. Because if you look at it closely, that scene is a single take. But that does not infringe. We are not really wowed by the single take itself, rather than the act he's doing. We are more wowed by the act he's committing of just throwing him out the window. Anyway, I just wanted to make that point.
yeah,
Please go ahead.
and that is correct. I mean, even I have like taken a screenshot of the scene because I wanted to talk about it. But in a moment, what I was saying is that Gore. So he's not scared of. He shows us a couple of photos of the corpse of the girl, right? To which Rockwell's character then sort of responds by sort of vomiting or being nauseated. Now talking about the characters, it is very obvious since the start that okay, this person is the protagonist, while we see her transform into sort of an antagonist or an anti-hero in the sense that she's committing a lot of like she's doing a lot of things that we might not necessarily agree with, right? um, and then but then what actually threw me off was the acting of a couple of side actors. Like, I remember literally cringing when there's that scene of confrontation with her ex-husband and the son holds the knife against his dad's throat, because it's very unconvincing and it just seems so forced. And that is why that acting, or say the bimbo's acting, the girl who's supposed to be dumb, what's her name, Penelope's acting, just sort of threw me off, because I felt that these were some characters who were treated as caricatures. And I think that might also be a point in the sense that I felt I had a problem with two female characters just being treated as bimbos, and that being shown in the movie in that sense. So they take Penelope's character and they do that to her. They take Red's assistant's character and they do the same to her. And that felt a bit problematic to me. But apart from that, of course, the performances were amazing. I loved how this guy's character also transforms, Rockwell's character, Dixon, that is, how he transforms. Although that transformation seems a bit unnatural in the sense that it happens over a letter. You literally see the same old ignorant Dixon walk into the office. He reads the letter, and then suddenly he has enough sense that he'll grab the file and keep it inside, and then jump out of the building and all of that, right? So suddenly, a character who was playing the fool across throughout the movie, the Joker or the fool throughout the movie, has suddenly, intellectualized to such an extent that he gains the insight to do all this. That somewhat was off-putting. But apart from that, I mean, of course, Bill's character is just amazing, and that's needless to say. So yeah, I mean, I really love that, but I felt that there was a like I didn't understand their redemption arcs as much, probably.
Yeah, so coming on that, right? About the thing that you mentioned about Dixon's character, I think it is adequately justified that he changes things, changes his way of looking at stuff. Of course, the death of his chief is a big point, but I think the real moment that he actually turns over comes when he is in the same room, same hospital room as Red, and I think that is the turning point for his character, which I thought. Coming back to your comment about performances of especially the actor who plays Mildred's son, his name is Lucas Hedges, and he has played a an almost similar role in another brilliant film, which also deals with themes of death, and it also has a few magical, realistic elements to it, and it's called Manchester by the Sea. It's very similar to this film in a lot of aspects, but it also differs in the sense that there the setting is more how do you say, like it's more solid. You come to know of the town that it's set in and things like that. Yeah, so that is just one comment that I wanted to make about what you said.
Right. Another thing that I would really like to appreciate is Red's acting, because he was a character which was shown to be complex in the sense that he was going through a moral dilemma, right? And you get to see that moral dilemma on his face, and you understand what that character is going through. There are very subtle nuances, like when he's sitting in the office and he's being interrogated for the first time by the station sergeant and Bill. He has to act very tough, even if अंदर से उसका फट रहा है, even if he's very nervous. Because why? Because that cute assistant is sitting opposite to him and she is watching, right? So he has to act pretty tough. And those subtle nuances really made that character really interesting and really colorful for me, at least. So yeah, what do you think about the redemption arc of the characters, though? Like,
Sorry, I was also going to come to that. So again, I don't, as I had mentioned earlier, also I don't think they need redemption arcs, because I don't think that's how I don't think the tone of the film is that. I think the tone of the film is that these people have certain very strong views, and they're going to stick to that. And so I don't think, like, for example, there is I don't see the transformation of Sam Rockwell's character as some sort of redemption at all. I thought he was always like that, and the letter by Willoughby just made him realize that other people also think of him like that, and then he just wants to solve the case that of Mildred Hayes' daughter, just because he wants to not let that be one blot on his chief's record, who he so dearly loved. So I don't think it was a redemption ask as much as an arc which how do I put it? Where he wanted to, just clean the record of his own chief. Yeah. So I don't think the film needs redemption arcs because, as you see, like especially Mildred Hayes' character, she does not get any redemption even in the end. Like we
Right,
like I
right.
mean, she is not.
No, there are
She's
certain things. There are certain things for Mildred Hayes that are shown to, even at the most extreme moments, that are shown to justify her actions or to sort of redeem her character in front of the audience. For example, she goes to the press office, she goes to the advertising office, and gives a call to the police station to check if there's any person there
But I don't
before
think I
attacking.
don't think that's as much as a I don't think that's a redemption arc as much as it is a complexity of character arc. I mean, it's just the way that her
Correct, correct.
character is that way. It's not something that I mean, it's not redeeming the main conflict in her life, which is the death of her daughter, and it's not redeeming that. Like for example, it's not redeeming her whole action of trying to bomb the station itself. That's not getting redeemed by that one phone call. So yeah, yeah.
Right, correct. Yeah, another quote that I would like to talk about here is this quote I read. I forgot the source, but what it said was the happy ending allows that after all her antics, she ends up looking foolish. After everything that she did, she still has no closure. There's no hands on the criminal, on the right perpetrator. So she's not a fool. She's just hurt. This is what has happened near the end, right? And while we like to, so yeah, that was just something. One thing that I really liked about the movie was similar to Masan, it had no judgments about its characters.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree.
Yeah, all the characters are just presented to you with all their actions, with everything that they do, what's and all, as Bojack says, in front of you, and that's it. They are left to your interpretation. You like them, you like them. You don't, you don't. It's okay. The movie does not justify them to that extent. Yeah.
Right. I mean, like that brings me to one other thing, which, in fact, we were also discussing before we started. What do you think about the racial politics of this film? As a film set in the 21st century. What do you think about that? I'll give my sort of headway on that. I first of all, I don't know if I should judge it because I am myself not very aware of the racial politics in the US. I personally, as I've mentioned at the start as well, I don't think the setting of Ebbing is that important a factor in what makes this film good. So I don't. I think it could have been set anywhere else. Another thing is Martin McDonagh himself says that the film was written 6 years before it actually released, 6 or 8 years. So I personally don't think it says that, and I don't because of the comment that you just mentioned, there is no there is the actors are just sorry, the characters are just mentioned as they are, and it's left to our judgment where it's where the whether the characters were racist or not. And of course the characters of or character of Dixon was racist. We understand that, but does it amplify racism? I am not sure because I don't know about the racial politics of the United States. Another thing an argument which has been raised against the film is that the racist character in this case is given a glorified ending, which I do not think so because I mean, if you think about it, the act that they're gonna commit, they're gonna kill another person, is not a glorification. I don't think they're not glorifying the act of killing them. I don't think that the fact that he for example, he of course gets hurt, and all his actions that he did, even with the guy who was talking in the bar, that didn't lead to anything, right? So I don't think he's really glorified, but that's just my way of looking at it, and I don't, of course. I am, of course, not the authority in this matter. So, what do you say?
Right. My understanding of that argument was that he's glorified in the sense that everything that he said against racism, he has gotten away with that just like that. Just because he's addressing another problem. Now, here's a broader argument that I came across. This movie talks about a lot of things, and given that it's dark comedy or black comedy, so to say, it can get away with a lot of things. So, for example, it will talk about dwarfs, it will talk about fat dentists, it will talk about dead kids, where Sam Rockwell's mother says, talking about dead kids, what's going on with the case, right? It will give a comic treatment to both the cases also. When he says, give me the Hayes case file, when Bill says that, and Dixon is like, Angela Hayes or Mildred Hayes, and that is an extremely funny moment. But then again, you realize that they are sort of taking away the sensitivity from the topic. It is addressing a lot of things, but there was this argument that a lot of people gave that at one point you can only outrage or you can only speak against one thing, is what this movie is doing, in the sense that if it is taking up racism, it is not speaking against it to the extent that it feels like a central point, but the number of times that it talks about racist injustices being imposed feels like it is a central point. So you have sort of made it one of the big conflicts, but the sort of arguments or the sort of opinions that you have put forth do not sort of compensate for that, is what I felt. So, in the sense that yes, this movie speaks up against certain aspects of misogyny. It speaks up against sexual violence. It shows it has a lot of women empowerment. It has a lot of empowered women, in fact, and I love that about the film. Like the shopkeeper, the protagonist herself, or if you look at the wife. I mean, she has to handle this eventually, right? Her husband's suicide and everything. So there is empowerment there. But what I felt was problematic was that you are bringing up racism again and again. Even the shopkeeper is taken away on this, just like on this fact that he very cleverly uses the black friend and arrests her on the count of owning marijuana, and she's taken away. But things like that are not spoken for. Is my problem, so to say. It's not necessarily a problem, because I believe that an artist is free to talk about what he wants to talk about and explain what he wants to explain or not. That's all right. But that is where I understand I feel that the argument or the criticism is coming from. Because at a moment it also addresses the Catholic priest culture of altar boy fucking, as she says. So it's very politically incorrect at that. But then but we miss a politically incorrect bandage over all this, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get that argument. It's just that when in general, when people speak about these arguments, I'm always in a dilemma whether it should actually show whatever the action that is being committed in its realistic interpretation, or should it show it in a politically correct way. I don't know. I mean, my answer is always it's based on my intuition. Like, for example, I hate the movie Kabir Singh, but I have seen toxic masculinity being used in other films, and I have not raised a big. I mean, of course, we can go on and on about this debate, because this debate is also then boiled down eventually to the question of art versus the artist, or basically, how I like to put it in front of most of my people. Like, the question that I ask them is, would you still watch Marlon Brando films? Is because Marlon Brando is a proven sexual assaulter. Just because he's dead and just because he's just a great actor, will you still continue saying that Godfather is a great film? I am not making any judgments on this, but this is the classic question that I ask people when they start the art versus art debate, because I'm personally also very confused about this. So yeah, is there anything else you want to talk about?
I wanted to talk a bit about the comedy of the movie, because it was very surprising to me, in the sense that treatment was something that I wasn't expecting, because as I said earlier, because the setting of the movie was such. But then the extents to which McDonagh dares to pull it, So he'll pull it to dead kids, he'll pull it to priesthood, he'll pull it to, and at the same time, it's not like all of the comedy is very intellectual. There are very silly gags also, like Dixon's initial exchanges with the billboard painters, where they're just both of them are like, what the fuck is that? All of that. Or there are comic moments with Dixon at the bar where he's drunk out of his mind, and he suddenly starts talking about Cuba. So, I mean, such elements really gave a comic relief in an otherwise very tense film. Um, but I'm not sure whether it was intended to be a dramedy or not. I mean, one very interesting opinion I read on this was that this is practically like the character, the protagonist is practically Rambo, just with a sort of a social message on our hands that we can sort of relate to, and that is why we give it a tragedy sort of a treatment. The audience gives a tragedy sort of a treatment, whereas actually it's just an action comedy.
I mean, I don't have a lot of trouble believing that if that is indeed the case because it's see that's the thing, right? I mean, if you're making something a comedy, there are things you can explore which you could not have other explored if you had made this like a proper tragedy. And this is not a new thing, to be honest. This we have seen it, in even Indian cinema. You have seen it most primarily in Gangs of Wasseypur, in the way it gives a comic touch to every killing, for example, which allows it to, have scenes like the Kathal wala scene, which I really love. This is basically where Sultan Khan, Sultan, whatever, I think so. But Pankaj Tripathi's character dies basically in the end in that scene, and I feel that's a brilliant scene, and it's sort of ties back into this, and it's like I also read that this is another opinion piece about this film also said that this film is basically Martin McDonagh trying to ape Quentin Tarantino, which I have a huge disagreement with. And this is because Martin McDonagh has been writing this scripts like this for theater around the same time that Quentin Tarantino started coming into the fore. So I don't agree with that comment at all. I don't think it's sort of a sure. I mean, this film has in the Coen's. I mean, I thought this film was closer to a Coen Brothers film than a Quentin Tarantino film. In fact, all of his other films. But I don't think there is something which is where Mark McDonagh is trying to rip off of other people. I think that's been his original style, and this dark kind of humor has been his original style. I mean, if for example it was closer to a Tarantino film, this film would have been way slower, which it is not. And the fact that there are like, conflicts coming up at every 10 minutes of the film makes it a uniquely Martin McDonagh film because that's also how his theatre scripts are. I would really urge people to go and read the script of Pillowman, which should be available freely, or they can contact me. Which I think is a nice introduction to the way McDonagh writes.
I think if this is not, I mean, if this movie does not come across as original, I don't know what does. I mean, as you said, now that you say it, I realize that okay, it did look like a Coen Brothers film in its aesthetics also.
I mean, that could also, I mean, of course it's there with just but the other factors could have been just, Francis McDormand and Carter Burwell being the music director and Francis McDormand being in the film because that's also a very Coen Brothers thing.
Right, maybe. But yeah, I appreciated it as a genuinely, like, it was a new form of movies for me. I mean, and I think I would call it like a very very deceptive genre where the audience perceives it to be something wherein actually, like, everyone could experience the movie differently. While this applies to a lot of movies, but I think this movie is a very interesting case for that. A similar thing can be said for In Bruges, but In Bruges is a more it has been given enough comedy treatment for it to be clearer. So, anyways,
So I mean to end, I would like just to say that the next film that Francis McDormand is doing is the Tragedy of Macbeth, directed by Joel Cohen, which is only directed by Joel Cohen because Ethan Cohen wants to try doing theater, and I am really excited about that film because she's playing Lady Macbeth in it. And that's brilliant. Of course, yeah. Another fun fact is that Martin McDonagh's current partner is Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who I have a massive crush on, and I would give anything, any part of my body to meet her. But yeah, anyway. So these are like real power couples in the scheme of things. Okay then, so I think this was a really nice conversation, Devans. It's one of the times where we have discussed a lot of interpretations and things like that, apart from just discussing the technical aspects of the film. So yeah,
And opinions too,
yeah, and opinions from other
on
people.
popular demand.
Yeah. We really had a lot of fun recording this. So if you guys liked us, please do follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Cut to Scene. We would also like to know your opinions about what we about the film itself and also what we presented to you in this podcast. Please do write to us on Twitter and Instagram. Our DMs are open. Please also share this podcast with your friends if you liked it. We really need this because we have no other way of amplifying our voice. So if you really like this, please and consider it share worthy. Please do share this with your friends and family. You can follow me Aditya on Instagram at Adi Vijaykumar, on Twitter at also goes by V. You can follow Devansh on at Devnash on Twitter and Instagram. And yeah, please do write in and please do tell us how you felt about this film. I hope you all are staying well. Please continue to stay well, and I know these are difficult times. Please continue to stay well. Thank you, and see you next time.
Bye bye.
Pretty songs and pretty faces tell me what their laughter means. Some look like they'll cry forever. Tell me what their laughter means. Well, if I had a buckskin stallion, I'd tame him down and ride away. And if I had a golden galleon, I'd sail into the light of day. If I had your love forever, sail into the light of day.